would like to ask Mayor Cloudman to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Okay, let's go around the table. Everybody introduce yourselves, what's your name and which MPO or TPO you represent. Once we finish that, Mr. Smith can confirm whether we have a quorum present.
Mike Woods, Lake Sumter MPO.
Cal Rolfson, Chair of Lake Sumter MPO and City Council Member in Mount Dora City Council.
Good morning, Chris Cloudman, Mayor of the City of DeLand and Chair of the River to Sea TPO.
David Alphen, River to Sea TPO.
Colleen Nicklin, Director of River to Sea TPO.
Georgiana Gillette, Director of the Space Coast TPO.
Morning, Yvonne Minus, Vice Mayor, City of Melbourne, Space Coast, League of Cities, and a TPO.
Good morning, Joe Robinson, Vice Mayor, City of Titusville, and Space Coast.
Jack Atkins, DOT District 5 Development Director.
Bessie Rena, FDOT District 1, ISD Administrator.
Siausi Fine, Turnpike MPO Liaison.
Sorry, I couldn't see behind me. Good morning, Ryan Portick, Executive Director with the Polk TPO.
I'm hitting the wrong button, but it's Roy Tyler, Mayor of Haines City.
Mayor Nancy Daly, City of Lake Alfred, and Polk TPO.
Good morning, Gary Hutman, Director of Metro Plan Orlando.
Good morning, Vice Mayor of the City of Kissimmee.
And last but not least, Lee Constantine, Seminole County Commissioner and on the east, this central part of regional play. What am I doing? MPO.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. All right, before we get into the regular agenda, we have a presentation from Mr. Kordek. Perfect, thank you.
Again, good morning, Ryan Portick with the Polk TPO, and I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge an outgoing member of the Polk TPO, as well as the Central Florida MPO Alliance, and that's Mayor Roy Tyler. And I just have a few things to read about, to discuss with you about him that we want to cover. And I did this just 24 hours ago, myself and our board chair, so we're well practiced up on this. But off to my left here, Roy Tyler, Mayor of Haines City, again, a Polk TPO member, as well as the Central Florida MPO Alliance, over 30 years on the Haines City Commission. He came on board in 1992. He has represented our TPO for 25 years, representing the city on the TPO board, coming on in 1999. And he served 8 years as either our chair or vice chair on the Polk TPO. He's represented the TPO board on many regional transportation boards and committees, specifically serving the Central Florida MPO Alliance, I think since it was 2003 when the Polk TPO became a member of the Alliance. So he's been, again, a member of this board for 21 years. And again, we just want to acknowledge him today. There's a little bit of an award, I guess, or a little plaque here. Looks like you can either hang up or put on your desk. It says Mayor Roy Tyler, Central Florida MPO Alliance, a leader who is someone who demonstrates what's possible. Thank you for your leadership. So. Like we did yesterday, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mayor, please.
Well, something that we as politicians have not been known to do, but I'm going to thank you.
Very good. Appreciate that very much. Okay, now time for public comments on action items. So this is the first of 2 opportunities for public comments. Public comments on action items are heard before action is taken at the beginning of this meeting. Comments that are more general will be heard near the end. I think we only have, the only action item is the minutes, right? So, I won't get too far into this then, but you get 2 minutes to speak. If anybody wants to speak on the minutes from last time. All right, seeing none. Anybody, online? Do we have anyone online?
Mr. Chairman, we have no one online.
Very good. Thank you very much. And speaking in person, we don't have any cards. Okay,
We do
very
not.
good. All right. Okay, so now we're to reports.
Mr. Chairman, you need a motion for.
Motion for approval of the minutes, please.
Ralston, second.
Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Opposed? There are none, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I did not get who was the maker and the seconder of the motion.
Second was Cal Ralston Montoro.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, delegation reports are provided for information purposes only unless someone has a question for one of the directors. Hope you've all had a chance to review them. Are there any questions related to any of the delegation reports? Hearing none, we'll move on to the FDOT district reports. We'll start with District 1, Ms. Bessie Reyna.
Good morning. For District 1, I would like to share with everybody today an update on our master plan for the Collier to Polk Regional Trail. This plan will define the initial vision for a connected multi-use trail through Collier, Henry, Glades, Highland, Hardy, and Polk counties. Currently, the project is getting ready to go to public meetings. We have a set of public meetings scheduled for the end of May and first week of June. I want to highlight that the public meeting for Polk County will be June the 4th. And I would also like to give a small update on our Polk County Sunrail expansion PD&E study. We are still in the procurement process to hire a consultant firm to help us with that project. But hopefully in the upcoming months, we can come back and provide an update on the tentative schedule for the kickoff of that study. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, moving on to District 5, Mr. Atkins.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just have a few things I want to touch base with. One of them, project that doesn't get a lot of love. All moving Florida forward projects tend to get a lot of love, but we have a project we're working on over in Brevard County, Ellis Road. And we have a working group we've put together, and we're trying to kind of bridge that gap on funding. And some of the strategies that we're looking at, one of which is getting a value engineering or VE study going, and we have that scheduled to begin May 20th through 24th. And it's kind of a first step that'll give us, hopefully we'll reduce some costs, and then we're going to start looking for funding opportunities. But Ellis Road is a very important arterial for Brevard County. It connects I-95 with Melbourne Airport, and a lot of defense contractors are in that area. Very large economic driver, and so important project for Brevard County, and we're really excited about it. A second topic I want to touch on, and I believe Alex is going to speak on it later with great detail, but the greenhouse gas ruling that came out, the judge in Kentucky found in favor of the states, and very happy about that ruling, and a ruling that we felt, all along was should have happened. And so Alex, I'm sure we'll go into some detail on that, but it's very helpful for us, state of Florida, and also all the MPOs. Next week, Kelly Smith and her team will be contacting all the executive directors for the MPOs. We're at that time where we have to start dealing with appropriations. We've kind of got our number. Of course, when the governor has the opportunity to line item, but right now what we're dealing with is in excess of $50 million that will be coming out of the trust fund, and that's District 5's portion. So we're going to start looking at strategies and talking to each of you for that. I'll be in Tallahassee next week, so Kelly will be, and her team will be contacting you all and start looking at things we can do to bridge that gap. And then the last two things I want to hit on are a couple of safety messages. Just want to highlight that April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month, and a lot of statistics out there, but one of, very telling one is 5 distracted seconds at the speed of 55 miles per hour is the same as driving the entire length of a football field with your eyes closed. We see it every day with folks texting and driving, swerving in and out, and we're just trying to highlight that and make sure everybody's aware. Distracted driving is on the rise, and it's a horrible contributor to fatalities and issues. And then lastly, National Work Zone Awareness Week is next week, April 15th through 19th. And it's just highlighting, again, another safety issue that we have on our interstates. I know we've had a couple of issues within the last month where we've lost DOT personnel to fatalities and accidents on the interstate. Just want to make sure we highlight that, and Wednesday is Wear Orange Day. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Any questions for Mr. Atkins? Okay, Mr. Fine with the Turnpike.
Good morning, Alliance members. Florida Turnpike Enterprise will be holding an alternatives public information meeting, actually more than one, for the PD&E study looking at the mainline widening from State Road 70 in St. Lucie County to State Road 60 in Osceola County. So the primary work mix will be widening the Turnpike mainline from 4 to 6 lanes. But we'll also be looking at improvements to the State Road 60 interchange at Yeehaw Junction, and also bridge reconstructions along that portion of the Turnpike main line. We're evaluating those. So this route is regionally significant for folks that travel on the Turnpike main line from Central Florida to South Florida and vice versa, using the Turnpike. So on May 1st, there will be a virtual public hearing session that will begin at 5:30 p.m. Also, there will be 2 in-person sessions, and the first one will be on May 7th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Indian River State College in Fort Pierce, Florida. And then the second will be on May 9th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Intergenerational Recreational Center in Vero Beach, Florida. Registration for all 3 of those sessions can be completed on the floridasturnpike.com. But with that being said, that is the end of my report.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Fine. Yes.
Thank you. And with apologies, I don't have a question on the Turnpike. Just as a matter of shock value, I think all of us sitting here, in my opinion, should make sure we bring back to our constituents in a very poignant verbal way what our previous speaker said about distracted driving. As the least we can do is dealing with transportation. I intend to go to our city council and announce that on Tuesday. But I think we got several dozen people in the room spreading that message that many people don't know how to help shock value for those that do distracted driving. I just felt the need to reinforce that. Not that I'm special, but it was an awesome piece of data that is worth repeating. So I thank you for that.
Appreciate that. Anyone else? Okay, we've already done the minutes, so let's go on to presentations. Mr. Lepp with the MPO Central Florida Alliance coordination efforts.
Good morning, Nick Lepp from HDR. Here to present a coordination effort that we're going to try to advance as we start developing these long-range plans. Excuse me. So we are in long-range plan season as all of the MPOs are starting to develop their 2050 plan. The Central Florida MPO Alliance has coordinated on this effort as we've talked about these plans as we've crossed boundaries in the development, but then also after the plan as we've developed kind of that regional long-range plan. Why do we do this? We want to make sure these major transportation projects have that emphasis. The Central Florida MPO Alliance has had great success in advancing projects like I-4 and the Coast to Coast and Sunrail. So how do we keep that momentum going on as we develop these long-range plans? We came up with a kind of a concept to putting these together And also that could work as we look forward into the priority list with the conversations and also that regional long-range plan for 2050. And the idea is instead of talking about all of our spaghetti of roadway network, which is the functional classification, not only in your MPO area, but if you look at it for the whole Central Florida Alliance, it looks something like this. And it's very difficult to understand or talk about a priority for the region within all of these. But maybe if we start focusing more on a regional network, or as say identified regionally significant, if we start identifying this Central Florida Alliance regionally significant network, it could streamline the conversations around what would those priorities be just on these networks that impact all of the alliance, crossing the board boundaries, or just something that we know goes across every single one. So this is just kind of a concept of what the, if we looked at the strategic intermodal system, also the national highway system, which has the StratNet, and then maybe some of the other state roads, what it could look like. As a concept, what we'd like to do is work with all of the MPO's staff together and determine what is that regional network that could work for the CF-MPO Alliance, not just for roadways, but for intermodal, regional trails, new corridors, and emerging technology. So what could that network look like? And then we'd like to come back maybe in October and present that as an option for developing those future plans and priorities in the future. So this was just a presentation to present the concept, and looking for just any concept or questions or comments or ideas.
Very good. Any discussion on the concept? Sounds like we're all in favor then.
All right.
Sounds good.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, that's good.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to it. Should be very interesting. Okay, moving Florida forward, the I-4, I-75, I-95 presentations, Mr. Kestry and Mr. Hood with FDOT.
My name is Jeffrey. And then we're gonna cover a few of our projects here moving forward. Little quick agenda. First of all, we're gonna go over our attendance work program coming up in the next 5 years. We're gonna highlight a couple of the moving forward projects we have. Then we'll be covering a couple of project highlights of some projects we have in the pipeline. Okay, this is a quick overview of our tentative work program for the next 5 years, which covers from fiscal year 25 through fiscal year 29. So as you can see, it's about $8 billion over those 5 years. So that's averages out to just over $1 billion a year. So we're very lucky to have a very good, robust work program here in District 5. As you can see, it's just over $3.3 billion allocated to state and other road construction, $1.5 billion to resurfacing, and then we're also lucky enough to have almost $800 million allocated to modal development improvements as well. Okay, moving forward. This was something that back in 2023, Governor DeSantis proposed in the legislature. We were fortunate enough they did fund the Moving Florida Forward initiative, and these were projects that weren't selected by accident. These were projects that were selected based on their regional impact to a community and a surrounding area, not just to that specific roadway network in that area. For District 5, we were lucky enough to actually get 4 projects that were funded, and these were previously unfunded projects, so we're very lucky. So I-4, I-75, US 301, and the I-95 US 1 interchange all received funding through Moving Florida Forward. First off, we'll start off with I-75 here, and we'll cover this one a little more in depth because this one is moving a little bit faster, and we are moving through procurement very quickly on this stretch of roadway. So first of all, I-75, it's a 30-mile corridor. It stretches from south of State Road 44 in Sumter County to State Road 326 interchange in Marion County. We plan to deliver this corridor in 2 separate projects. So the first one is a south project, and it goes from State Road 44 to State Road 200. The estimated cost for that is $222 million, and it has been advertised. It was advertised March 29th, so just a few weeks ago. The second project will be extending from State Road 200 to the 326 interchange. It's about $170 million, and it's planned to advertise late May, early June. Both projects are funded and scheduled for construction to begin in 2025 as well. This here is just kind of a typical section of what is proposed through the Moving Florida Forward project. So basically, we're constructing auxiliary lanes or aux lanes to the outside of the existing lanes. And so what aux lanes do is as you enter the interstate from interchange, that merge lane will no longer merge. It'll carry through to the next interchange. And at that interchange, it will drop. Then on the backside of the interchange, the new merge lane will continue. So basically, it's like adding capacity without extending it through the interchanges. So it's an easy way for us to avoid some of the hoops we have to jump through with adding capacity without going through the actual interchanges and the bridges itself. And all these improvements, they can be constructed within the existing right-of-way of I-75. We will need a right-of-way for the ponds to accommodate the new drainage. The south segment, let's look at that in a little more detail. So it's a 22-mile stretch of road. The planned delivery method for that is phase design build, something that we're fairly new to the state of Florida. In addition to the auxiliary lane construction, we're also going to be milling and resurfacing the existing lanes, widening the bridge at State Road 44, and there'll be 3 bridge replacements, County Road 462, 475, and Southwest 66th Street. Also do some minor local road improvements necessary as we do replace those bridges. This here is kind of the procurement schedule. Like I said, we did advertise that one already, March 29th. So a phase design bill. So basically the contractor will submit qualifications and they'll be graded based upon that. And those grades, so basically when we select the apparent contractor it is scheduled for June 17th. So like I said, we're moving very, very quickly. The PD&E on this project is still ongoing. Expect that to be finalized by the end of the year. And you can see the rest of the schedule there. So public meeting for that PD&E is coming up in June timeframe. North segment. So it's 8 miles long, very similar scope. We are doing this as a standard design build, so adjust a score where we grade and we also receive bids, and those are factored in and we come up with a apparent winner. So in addition to the auxiliary lanes and resurfacing the existing lanes that are in this stretch of road, we will also be widening the bridge at Southwest 20th Street, replacing the bridge at Northwest 63rd Street. We're going to be doing some operational improvements to the State Road 40 interchange, the State Road 326 interchange, and we'll be constructing a brand new interchange at Northwest 49th Street. And that also will include some local road improvements that we're working with Marion County to construct to connect into the interchange there as well. This is a little bit higher level overview of what we're doing at the State Road 40 interchange. So it's not a whole lot of work there. So basically, as you exit northbound and southbound, we're going to be widening to provide dual left turn lanes there to help improve the capacity to that interchange. And we'll also be constructing pedestrian improvements as necessary at these ramps as well. This here's a higher level view of the 49th Street interchange. So as you can see, it's a brand new interchange. It's going to be a diverging diamond interchange. We'll be connecting the local roads on both sides of the interchange there. If you've been to this area, there's a lot of industrial development going on, a lot of warehouses in this. So this interchange will actually help improve the access to this interchange. So all these trucks, I mean, there's a lot of coming and going trips here. This will allow them to get direct access to the interchange without having to go through the local roadway network to get to either a north or south interchange. So we're really looking forward to getting this project going. One thing to note, this project here, so as we mentioned, the Moving Florida Forward projects are the aux lanes. This actually isn't a Moving Florida Forward project. But as it got funded, it allowed us to actually move this project up about a year within our work program. So even the projects within our work program, they're benefiting from the initiative, the Moving Florida Forward initiative. So we are able to actually group this and we're gonna advertise it together and able to get this project actually going much quicker than we initially expected. So this is the State Road 326 interchange. So again, if you've ever been through here, it's very congested, a lot of trucks. So we're going to do some operational improvements like adding additional left turn lanes, dual left turn lanes on the ramps as you exit and enter the interstate, adding an additional right turn lane for trucks as they go back north onto I-95. We're going to add a displaced left turn lane to kind of help move that truck traffic through there and avoid some of the queuing incidents we have along the interchange there. And most of these improvements can be constructed within the existing right-of-way. Need a small strip take for that right turn lane going back north on 75 as you go west on 326. So it's definitely going to improve the operations at this interchange. This here's kind of the procurement schedule for that north segment. So we plan on advertising late May, early June. It's a typical design build, so we'll probably open bids announce the scores, and the apparent winner will be late November, early December, end of this year. We expect construction to start sometime in spring, summer of next year. So it's coming very quickly. The next project. So this one here is a little bit more behind. So this is a US 1 I-95 interchange. It's in northern Volusia County, just north of Ormond. I think it's probably one of the last, if not the only existing original interchange as part of the original interstate construction. So if you've been there, there's some very tight geometry through there. It's going to be a much needed improvement. In addition to, again, as you can see here, we're constructing a diverging diamond interchange there as well. In addition to that, we'll be constructing bicycle and pedestrian improvements throughout the corridor there on US 1 as well. Also, we'll be improving access to some of the communities, the local roads, and the businesses throughout that immediate area as well. So this one is scheduled to be a conventional letting in fiscal year 27. We're finalizing design now. We'll be moving into the right-of-way phase. So this one is funded in 27, and everything's going well with this project, and it's on schedule. Okay, so where do we go from here? So some of the things we're looking at is forwarding a corridor study on I-95. Now, we've done a lot of improvements over the last several years, but there's still more that need to be done. So what we're doing is we're looking at all the interchanges through this corridor, evaluating any long-term, short-term improvements, and also helping to develop a funding strategy to get those improvements out to construction. And as you can see, it goes through 3 counties within our district: Brevard, Volusia, and Flagler. It's 137 miles. So as you go through those corridor studies, the next step is to move some of those projects into the PD&E phase. So we were able to do that with 2 projects: the I-95 interchange at Malabar Road and the I-95 change at State Road 40. Both those are scheduled to advertise next year, fiscal year 25. So I believe they're going to advertise shortly after our fiscal year begins in July. One of the last things we want to cover, we always try to highlight this as a compass. This is kind of how this guides DOT, how we approach our roadway improvements, how we work with our local communities and our local stakeholders. So as you can see, communities right at the center of the compass, because that's at the center of everything we do. We do a lot of public engagement. I can tell you that we've done a lot on I-75, a lot to get buy-in on what we're doing as far as that corridor goes. Of course, safety, that's at the top. That's very important to us. Resiliency of the roadway network, improving the supply chain, technology, workforce development. Those are all things that we consider as we go through our approach to developing a project. And with that, I'll end my presentation. Any questions?
Very good, Mr. Kestrick. I have one, so probably a newbie question, but so when you're thinking through the redo of the, adding lanes, whatever. So like I-4 right through here has a through lane that's tolled, which seems to be working pretty well every time I've been on it. When and how is that decision process made?
Well, a lot of this process through meetings like this, where our local MPOs working with our local partners, going through some of the, as I mentioned earlier, we got some of those kind of corridor studies, and recommendations come out of that. Then they move to the PD&E phase, and that's where we evaluate a lot of our options. So one of them could be adding an auxiliary lane or adding a tolled lane like we have here. So those are evaluated, and as you go through the PD&E process, there will be several alternatives, and you evaluate those, and there's a process you go through, and then the preferred alternative comes out of that. So that's kind of how that's evaluated. Then we move into design, and a lot of things you got to consider is not just the design. You have a lot of right-of-way constraints, so it's very expensive. So that also affects your decision making as well.
Yeah, because I know, especially through Ocala, there's 2 masters, right? There's the local commuters, and then there's people driving right from one state to not to another, but to the south.
Yeah, that's always a concern. And then just recently we had a resurfacing project very close here at Conway Road. And that was one of the issues. We had a scope of work that the community didn't really support. So we had to do a lot of work with that community. We went back and did a lot of upgrades, changed the design drastically. And that was one of the issues we found is the local residents who live there had one vision. Well, most of the people actually drive through that road or getting to work that don't live there. So not only do you have to take into account the people that live there, you have to take into account the people that are using the road, all users, because we actually are putting bicycle improvements on that road. There was actually a lot of people who didn't want that. That's what we try to tell them. We can't just accommodate a small section of people. We have to try to accommodate everyone who uses that road and make it as safe as possible. So you're right. That's always a challenge for us.
Yeah, that's very good. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. You mentioned that with regard to the I-75 improvements up through to Ocala area. You also mentioned how anxious you were to get that going. And speaking for, as a traveler that uses that from time to time, nobody's more anxious than I am to get that going. So I just want to say thanks for the expedited work on that. It's really appreciated by many people. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. And again, going back to our compass, I mean, a lot of people think we just say this because that's kind of our motto. But that's not really true. If you look at I-75, everyone's seen the statistics of how often accidents happen there, and some are pretty severe, and it shuts down that interstate, and it creates a lot of issues, a lot of traffic delays. So, I mean, when you look at the compass, of course, communities, you know, we're going to create 49th Street interchange. We're going to bring a lot of traffic from those local roads right to the interstate. So it improves the quality of the community around there. Of course, safety. This is really going to help safety and supply chain with all those industrial improvements that are moving in there. I mean, it's just going to make things. And if you go up there and look, it's not, there's a lot. There's Amazon, the Buc-ee's that we showed on there, Chewy's, AutoZone. I can't tell you how many new industrial like warehouses are moving in there. And that's kind of a hub because I-75 is kind of a centrally located place in Florida. And that 75 corridor, you know, goes north and south. So it's a pretty important corridor in the area. So.
Appreciate that. Anyone else? Questions? Yes, sir.
Just for clarification, we've had a couple of presentations from the team, and it's called the Corridors,
Yes.
the Corridors team, that are managing at least two of the projects of the moving forward. But is that group is not going to do all of moving forward? Is that correct?
Well, Tracy is coming up to give a presentation on I-4, but
Okay.
yes, my understanding, they're handling basically, so we are handling I-75 out of our district, I-95 US 1 interchange will be handling. Also, I mentioned the US 301, we didn't cover that a lot. We are realigning 301 in that specific area of Sumter County there. And as part of that, those will be design build projects. We're moving through the design and the right-of-way process now. One is scheduled to let next June, fiscal year 25, and the following one will let about 10 months later. I believe it's around March, April timeframe of the following year. So, and we will be managing those, but I believe Tracy he'll speak more to what they're managing. So.
Okay. Oh, before Tracy comes to the mic, I do have a comment on the 326. Don't use it that often, but when I do, it's kind of intimidating. And so the improvements that you're showing don't come as far back as the access point out of that truck stop to get onto 326. Does your analysis, I assume, shows significant improvement at that driveway location?
Yeah, well, so if you look at 326, the interchange there, we're going just slightly west and we're going a little bit further to the east. And what you did, you're right, there's a lot of truck stops there, not on both sides of the road. So that presents a challenge to us is how do we give access and get. So one of the things we're coming up with that we're working through is providing a signalized intersection there to accommodate the truck traffic from both sides of the road. Because right now there's no real signalization there. And if you go through, your trucks are pulling out and it's at certain times it can be kind of chaotic through there. So that's one of the things we're working through is providing better access to both sides of the road through signalization, median modifications, that kind of thing. So, and we're working closely with the county. Marion County's been working well with us as far as some of the improvements that are kind of outside of our right of way. They're requiring certain things to be improved as this development comes in. That's going to help improve the congestion through there as well. So. Okay.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Hood, I guess.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to present on the Corridors program. But from the Corridors program office, I'm Tracy Hood. And my first point was to talk to you a little bit about who we are as a Corridors program officer. If you're scratching your head, what is that? Why do we have two DOT guys talking to us? That's I'm gonna hopefully give you a better understanding of that. Show you what projects we are doing and kind of by that what we're not doing, but the ones that we're focused on doing, kind of tell you where we are, very brief status update, talk to you about what we've done, outreach to the industry to figure out what's the best way to procure these projects and get them done. Talk about what we are doing in procurement, and then a little time for questions and answers. So the when the announcement was made to do the moving forward projects, most of the projects were kind of isolated and could be worked on in their home districts where they were happening. There are a few special things about this one. One, it was a lion's share of the money. There was a bunch of money coming to this one. There was over $2.5–3 billion that was coming to this one group of projects. It spans two geographical districts, District 1 and 5. It also includes a turnpike. and CFX Expressway. So there's a lot of moving parts. So what central office did was set up a new office to handle specifically this set of projects, but with an eye forward, seeing more and more things like this coming up where there's large groups of projects for large money. This office may exist after this group of projects gets done to do other similar type big mega projects. So this is the team. Keith Slater is the program director. We have an administrative assistant, Cheryl Willits. Tracy Hood, that's me, project controls program manager. Right now, Catalina Chacon she's the one that you'd have the pleasure of hearing from today typically, but she's off on a cruise, and so you're stuck with me for the day. Katie, she's over pre-construction activities. That's planning, design, anything that happens before construction. And then Katie Sherrard is the construction program manager, so she handles things during construction. We are expecting to get more staff, up to a dozen or more added to our team this cycle with the new in July when the new fiscal year rolls around. So we are building, but this is the core team at the moment. Our responsibilities are, Ed mentioned 12 and 13 was on his map. So those two are part of it, mostly because Poinciana Parkway Extension Connector 1 is critical and vital to get the traffic from 532 onto I-4 without the big bottleneck that we have there right now at Champions Gate. And it's interwoven, lots of ramps, lots of things have to get built at the same time. So it's included. Project 12 is basically the managed lanes through Osceola County and a little bit into Orange. And then Project 16 are the managed lanes from the county line down past 27. So those are the three projects that the Corridors Program Office is over. Those are our responsibilities. As we're doing them, we're coordinating closely with Districts 1 and 7 and the Turnpike to make sure we're all on the same page. Matter of fact, we're basing all of our projects are based on the preliminary engineering studies that were already done by Districts 1 and 5 through the beyond the ultimate studies. So the key thing I wanted to point out is nothing's really changing. We're building the same thing that we talked to everybody about building back when it was projects it was the PD&E projects in District 1 and District 5. We aren't changing any of the configurations. It's staying the same. And Polk County as well, but we just didn't include a graphic for that. But everything's staying the same with what we're doing. Our initial thought and how to put this out, Ed mentioned phase design build. Our initial plan was to do 2 phase design builds, one for Polk County, one for Osceola Orange County. When we started looking at that, and we started going to industry to talk about it, let me bump ahead one, started going to industry to talk about it. We determined that it was kind of too much. The projects were both over $1 billion. We were only finding 2, maybe 3 contractors that were willing to kind of take that on. And so we had to go back and kind of rethink. We had lots of meetings with lots of people in the industry. Now let me jump back to, sorry, I went the wrong way. Let me jump back to this slide. So I mentioned everything happened from the original NEPA process. Where we are now with developing the work is working on RFPs, RFQs, doing traffic. We're finalizing the design concept plans that are going to go to the design build firms for them to propose on. We're looking at other elements that are critical for us to get the things rolling, like the major projects requirements. We held our industry forum. Public engagement is continuously underway. A lot because we're going through the NEPA reevaluation process. That will continue through the phase design build process. I don't want to get in a long discussion about that, but the advantage to that is we hire contractor or contracting group that includes design engineers, study engineers, so we can work together collaboratively to come up with what's the best design to get the problem solved and save money. The goal is to not have a bunch of years of work and then a bunch of years of lawyers, right? We want to get everybody on the same page, make sure we all agree on what we're doing, and then go ahead. So that's kind of the plan with the phase design build. Again, right here today, we're doing part of our local agency coordination, but we're taking other routes as well to do that. SEP 14, that's something we have to do to be able to do these new procurement methods. So we've got that underway with FHWA, and we're looking into TIFIA loans potentially to help pay for this and then pay it back later. So I talked about the industry for industry outreach. The last bullet there, industry forum, that was actually held early in March. It was scheduled for February. It's held March 5th. We had over 300 people there, probably 20 firms, contracting firms. So it worked. When we looked at a different way to do the work, it worked. And this is a new way we looked at doing it. Instead of 2 huge projects, we've got 5 projects now. Projects 1, 2, and 3 are all still going to be phase design build. They've got a lot of complexities. They've got some things that we're uncertain about. They've got some things that we think there's still opportunities to save money if we get the right engineer and right contractor on board. Projects 4 and 5, pretty straightforward. Project 5 is Poinciana Parkway. It's greenfield. It's not interrupting or impacting much of anything. So those last 2, projects 4 and 5, we're putting out conventional design bid build. We're going to have designers put together a set of plans, put them out on the street, and they'll be bid and built. Basically, the schedule is late this year. We're going to start advertising to get projects 1 and 2 on board. Project 3 will be early next year. Project 4, if I remember right, it's 26 is when we plan to go to construction because we basically have all the right of way and everything we need. Project 5, we don't have right of way. We just finished the study. We need to buy the right of way and do all that. So it's going to take a little longer. Governor held a press conference a couple of weeks ago and announced that that's going to start in 28. Construction is going to start in 28. So that's when it's going to start. We'll make sure. But the plan worked. We got interest from at least a dozen firms or more in these 5 projects, and they won't be limited to 1 project. So we feel comfortable that we're going to get good competition, good people on board to do this work. And that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Hood? Yes.
I suspect that you're working closely with Brightline also.
I'm
Given that Brightline's not part of moving Florida forward, I mean, is that primarily your responsibility or still with the districts?
I meant to mention that
Okay.
as part of kind of why they formed this team. I had been in a role of coordinating the Brightline lease agreement between Orlando and Tampa before this team was formed. And I think that's part of the reason they pulled me onto the team, to kind of keep that background and knowledge. So that is still ongoing. We're looking for ways. What we don't want to do is build all this and then have them come in and tear it up and rebuild it to do what they want. So we're trying to identify how to do what they want while we're doing what we want. The issue we run into is, again, the governor said we aren't going to spend any state money on things for Brightline. So there's a line we've got to walk and figure out how to do that in a smart way so that we aren't spending state money, but we aren't being dumb about building things and then tearing back up again. So we're working through issues with that. We've got biweekly meetings with Assistant Secretary Holland and Brightline and the lawyer team and the other folks trying to figure out how we can make all that work together. The last bit of information I heard is we, the state, are working on a CRISI grant so we can get federal funds, federal rail front funds to pitch in to help build what they need now while they're building what we need. Then, thank you.
Very good. Very good. Anyone else? All right, moving on then. Thank you very much, Mr. Huffman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I need to start by, excuse me, just correcting the agenda. This says it's going to be adopted. This statement is not going to be adopted by the Alliance. But rather, it's really just an informational item that I wanted to say a few things about and explain to you where it came from, the reason it's even on your agenda. I was contacted recently by the Pinellas TPO director, who was instructed by his board to prepare a statement in support of connecting Orlando and Tampa by rail. And so he did that, and that's the statement that's included in your packet. And the reason that I wanted to get in front of you is the next ask is that at our next meeting, which is the joint meeting with the Suncoast TPA, they would like to have a joint resolution prepared that both regional organizations, the Central Florida MPO Alliance and the Suncoast TPA, can come together and adopt a resolution of support for a rail connection between Orlando and Tampa. Then they would request that as we're all preparing our long-range plan updates, that we have language in there that again further supports that. And the reason for that is, for example, the Chrissy grant that Tracy just referred to. If those applications can say that it has the support of the MPOs throughout the entire corridor, that simply strengthens that grant application. In Metroplan's case, in our 2045, our adopted long-range transportation plan, we already show the extension of Sunrail from its southern terminus in Poinciana to the Polk County line is in our plan, as well as a broad corridor for a rail connection between the Orlando airport and the attractions area, and then it continuing along the I-4 corridor to the county line. So we already have that support, but the Pinellas folks and others on the west side of the state are interested in getting the alliance's support to the extent that you believe you can for that connection. So that's the reason for it. I wanted to give you all a heads up that at the June meeting, when we come together with the Suncoast, you're likely to have a resolution on that agenda for support. And that's all I have for you this morning.
Very good. Would anybody like to comment on that? So I'll just, say that from my perspective, so we're nowhere near, right, the corridor. However, I was on 50 the other day heading west, the sort of the last ends of Lake County. And then the traffic on 50 was unreal. So the person I was talking to, that I was meeting with, I'm like, where's everybody coming from? Because there's nothing past, Lake County pretty much on 50. And it's the new bypass to 4, because when 4 is congested, people go up 75 and then they take 50 to get to Orlando. So I think everybody's affected, by the lack of not having, public transport from Orlando to hit Tampa. So just my 2 cents on the.
Or 3 cents.
Or that was 3. All right, maybe 4. All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Hutman. I appreciate that. Okay, now we have Mr. Trauger on from MPO Orlando on the federal GHG performance measure and target.
And I'll be relatively brief today. I think Jack really summed it up really well, unintentionally, but I think the letter that we have from DOT, from Secretary Purdue, really sums it up really well as it relates to the kind of the situation at hand. So I'm really going to take the opportunity this morning to just take us through kind of the history. I know we covered it really in detail at your last meeting, especially as it related to the metric, the implication to MPOs. But given the situation, the announcement, kind of the spoiler alert that has already been noticed, as it again, I'll be spending my time today accordingly. But as just a little bit of background, I do also want to talk about kind of what we did as staff in preparation for that, not knowing where the legal case was going to go. But again, the greenhouse gas performance measure was acknowledged, the carbon reduction program was acknowledged in the bipartisan infrastructure law. And then out of that infrastructure law, US DOT went into administrative rulemaking, and that took place during 2023. As part of that, they did post for public comment feedback from MPOs in states. So before this greenhouse gas performance measure became a rule and a regulation, DOT and others, Florida DOT and other states did express concern with US DOT's overstep. That being said, before the rule became final, FDOT did submit that letter up to US DOT acknowledging concern, reemphasizing the comments that they made, which were not addressed during the comment period and were not included in the final rule, that they would be opposing the rule there. So we talked about all the blue slides in detail at your last Alliance meeting, but for those who weren't here, I'll cover it very briefly today. Then on December 7th, That rule was posted in the Federal Register, requiring states and MPOs to adopt declining greenhouse gas targets. Immediately following that, the state of Florida, as discussed here in the letter, the state of Florida and 21 other states pursued a complaint and sought relief through the Kentucky District Court. At the same time, Texas, through the Texas District Courts, also sought very similar relief. The measure went into effect on January 8th earlier this year, as we talked about. And then just based on the court proceedings and negotiations that were taking place, we received a notification end of January from Federal Highway Administration that they'd be extending the deadlines. We talked about that really in detail. They gave everyone really an extra 90 days to sort things out as a requirement of the negotiations. And that really brought us up to what we talked about at the last Alliance meeting. The metric, the things that were happening kind of environmentally around our planning process. But we had good feedback from the last Alliance meeting, and we had the direction from the Alliance that as staff, we needed to prepare cautiously. You know, we saw, you know, what was happening in the federal courts, but as it relates to us doing our job, ensuring that our certifications, that our planning processes remain compliant, we were doing our due diligence. So, you know, during, you know, February and March, while we didn't have kind of that final court ruling yet, we met with Federal Highway and DOT in central office DOT to kind of see where we could, you know, find common ground. We also worked with the University of Central Florida. They have a strong air quality environmental science to see how we could work to develop forecast. Similarly, with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council, they have some novel work and that they have doing that they're conducting right now on the topic, focus a little more on the future, but a real opportunity for us to collaborate moving forward. We looked into the different different forecasting methods, ways of setting targets. We even did some preliminary metric projections using some of the simple algebraic approaches to kind of get an understanding of where we were. All that being said, you know, April 1st, no joke. Federal judge out of the district out of Kentucky really vacated the requirement, citing, you know, as mentioned in the letter, you know, simply that FHWA did not have the statutory authority to set that rule. Therefore, the requirements specific to MPOs and the state of Florida are kind of arbitrary, and I think they use the term capricious as well. Nonetheless, as part of that relief, there is a 30-day appeal period. So at the end of this month, the dust should settle, and we should know whether or not USDOT will be appealing and where this goes from there. The Texas case, again, it's following a different track. It had a 7-day appeal period at end of March, or excuse me, end of March. That's already elapsed. No appeal was made by USDOT. We want to use that as a litmus for what's going to happen. Who knows? But again, we're still cautiously preparing, not knowing what may happen with the next steps. So from my team, as I committed to each of the other MPOs, we will be following up with, simple kind of the algebraic metrics. So we'll be passing those on to each of the staffs using the different USDOT as well as the AASHTO. I do appreciate Rob passing that along. So we were able as staff to compare some of the more complex forecasting approaches as well as some of the simpler ones. So we'll have that as kind of food for thought moving forward. How we incorporate this into our long range plans, you know, that's still at the discretion. It's still voluntary. We can certainly still include, you know, the importance of our natural resources as part of our planning process, but it is not a requirement at this time. And I think that's where I'll leave today's presentation. So if there's any questions, I'll certainly do my best to field them. But that's kind of where the situation is at this time. Thank you.
Have you seen I think it was San Francisco did a study of the air quality and the pollutants and where they were coming from. And I didn't realize that they could separate out tailpipe emissions from smokestack and other things. And they're finding that as the EV adoption goes up, that the numbers, you know, are actually coming down, which is kind of an interesting thing. We'd have to somehow factor that in, right? The EV adoption rates and all that into, you know, what we think the future is going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. You just, if I may, I'll give you an example. As part of our due diligence, there are very sophisticated air quality models, MOVES. It's a post-processing model. It's kind of the USDOT and EPA's kind of gold standard for forecasting emissions. And a new version of that, it's called MOVES 4, just came out, and it includes the new electric vehicle as well as the new fleet mixes, including some of the new CAFE standards, corporate average fuel efficiency standards. And based on what Metro Plan Orlando had in its adopted cost feasible plan in 2025, we were seeing a VMT increase in about 10%, but actually a carbon reduction, tailpipe carbon reduction, about 3% reduction. So again, we're doing our due diligence, testing the models. And that was in a very sophisticated model. We also ran some of the more simpler, what I call algebraic models, just kind of like VMT times coefficient equals carbon. And they were showing some similar trend lines. So I think as lessons learned for kind of MPO staff, as we're going about this, if we have to go through a similar exercise in the future, we may not necessarily need to use the most complex or sophisticated models to project metrics in the short term. So, but yes, certainly electric vehicle fleet rate increases and just the fuel efficiency standards in general are shifting, which we're seeing, benefits across the board. So
Sure, very good. Any questions? Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, next we've got the MPA OAC legislative wrap-up. Not sure who's doing that for us. So just information items, okay? And same for the River to Sea. That's just information as well. Okay, so down to member comments. I'll start since I have the bully pulpit. Great place to thank the state. We're going to have the groundbreaking, yes, for realigning Route 50 around the city of Groveland. Right now, there's two lane highways, one-way highways going right through the city, and they've been trying for a long time to get their city back by getting the Route 50 to go around the city, and so that's all been done and finalized and in the can. And so yes, I think it's Friday week 19th week. We're going to have that ground. So I want to specifically thank the state for making that happen. It's going to transform the city of Groveland, which is great. Okay, anyone else? Member comments? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having a very quick update on one of our regional priorities. Brightline made the official announcement of their intent to develop a cocoa station. And, and of course, all of the inline stations, Aventura, Boca, the new station at Stewart, and then of course the cocoa station, all of those stations really stemmed from local government requests. And of course, our cocoa station, this was a decade in the making. My predecessor, Mr. Bob Comm, this was a big priority for him. And back in 2015, we conducted the station location study, which identified cocoa as the number one most feasible location. And so now the work really begins because Brightline is looking for funding partnerships. And so we're in the process of developing a funding plan. And the CRISI grant, as we know, is out, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. So we also will be submitting a CRISI grant in coordination with the City of Cocoa and the TPO. So we hope that we'll be successful and that there will be a cocoa station sooner rather than later. So we're excited about that.
Very good. Congratulations. Very, very neat. Anyone else like to weigh in?
Mr. Chair.
Never this shy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your leadership today. Well done.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Yes. Oh, we have one. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just want to go back and thank Mr. Atkins for the great report for the Ellis Road exchange that is in the Melbourne, West Melbourne corridor. And I can take it back to our council that it is moving forward and we're not just sitting waiting for the 50 million that we need, right? So definitely just want to thank you for that, and I'll take that back. Okay, thank you, sir.
Very good. Very good. Sir.
As I seek my departure here, I'd like to thank each and every member of this panel who gives up their most valuable time now, because I've been here long enough to understand. When I started here, I had hair and Jack's was all black, so you can tell how long I've been here. I was here for I-4 the ultimate. I lasted through I-4 beyond the ultimate. And I think each and every one of us understands something I came to grasp with several years back during my service. You know, there will always be challenges to be met. I've always considered this job to be one of accountability, not authority. Our residents have trusted in us to bring to them the best service we can. And that's difficult because when I started this, I actually had what my wife calls a real job. I think I still have one. She said, no, some of you guys are doing that just to avoid work around the house, which I hadn't been able to manage to do that either. But again, I'd like to salute all of you because I know what effort it takes. I know how much dedication you have to give. I also know that there are going to become people to your podium who think you are not that bright. But planting trees is a big onus of what we do, because when I came, I was standing in the shade of trees I didn't plant, but those trees were starting to shed leaves pretty rapidly. And I think if we look around here in just the last 3 or 4 years, you don't have to go back as far as me, 3 or 4 years, you will find out just how we are transitioning. So for the people who have to follow you, leave them a few leaves on the tree for shade. But again, thank you so much for the opportunity to have worked with a really good group of people who I think embody what public service ought to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know everybody here really appreciates that message. Thank you. Anybody want to try topping that?
Yeah.
All right, we can't. All right, so great. We're second opportunity for public comments. Comments heard at this point in the meeting are more general in nature, similar to the first. Comments may be made in person or online by those joining us via Zoom. Members of the public joining us virtually who wish to speak will use the raise hands feature on the Zoom screen. If attending by phone, hit *9 to raise your hand and request to be recognized. When you're called, staff will unmute your microphone and will ask you to state your name and contact information for the record. Rachel, anybody online?
Mr. Chairman, we have no hands raised.
Very good. And anybody in person, Lisa?
We have not received any requests.
And any by submittal, email, or phone?
None.
None. Okay. Our next meeting is June 14th, 2024. As a reminder, the Alliance will meet jointly with the Sun Coast Transportation Planning Alliance. And with that, we're adjourned.
Good job.
Thank you.
So Cal will be meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, 13 grandkids.